CCI Velocitor versus Aguila Interceptor. Both of these are hollow points. And our CCI Velocitor is a 40 grain copper plated hollow point rated at 1435 feet per second. Our Interceptor is also a 40 grain plated hollow point, but it's rated at 1470 feet per second, so a higher rating. So my original plan was to just test these two in this Taurus TX22 with a 4.1 inch barrel, see how they compare in a pistol. But I recently tested this Velocitor in this 18-inch Rossi RS22, and people were asking, a lot of people were asking to see the Velocitor compared to the Aguila Interceptor hollow point. And the reason why is because in that particular test, the Velocitor had quite a bit below rate of velocity, and a lot of people were saying that the Aguila actually was a lot closer to the rate of velocity and it might perform better than the CCI Velocitor. So I thought, let's just do our pistol test. Let's add the rifle to it, see how they compare. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. Normally I like to go into plain clear ballistics just to see what the best potential is of those cartridges are. You know, no denim to clog a hollow point, no rib simulation. But because I'm putting 4 shots in there, and I can kind of consider this my more important test, I'm going to do just our real world simulation. We're going to have 4 layers of denim on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we're going to have a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum. So we're getting right to the point with this test to see how these two compare in a test that I think is more important than just our plain clear ballistic test. A lot of times the reason why I like to do the plain test is because a lot of times we get a lot of hollow point failures, and I like to at least give it a chance to see what it's supposed to look like when it's expanded. So anyways, we're just going to do our real world simulation, and then as always I'm going to shoot up my steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, so the velocity reads on the screen there are from some Aguila Super Extras, just 40 grain round nose. Just running those through just to kind of see if my chronograph is going to work today. So we're going to run these velocities through the handgun first, and then we'll do the rifle. So first up, we have our Taurus TX22 with a 4.1 inch barrel. We have our CCI Velocitors, 40 grains. Let's see what these will do. .976, 1002, 996. Let me run a couple more. All right, let me run a couple more of these Velocitors. 1041, 954. So pretty inconsistent velocities. Now we have our 40 grain Interceptors. Let's see if these get above that velocity. 1117, 1008, 1083, 1058, 1075. So we did have one that was kind of inconsistent there as well, but we can see that definitely there's a lot more power with that Interceptor over that Velocitor. So let's run this stuff in the rifle now. First up, we have our Velocitors in the rifle. Let's see what this does. 1293, 1336, 1269, 1289, 1267. So considering it is rated at 1435, that is pretty disappointed to see that kind of low velocity. We're not really even hitting 1300 feet per second on average, I don't believe. So I'm loading up our Interceptors here. We'll see what we get with these to the rifle. I'm hoping that it's higher than, you know, around 1300. So here is our Aguila Interceptors to the rifle. Let's see what they do. 1372, 1328, 1322, 1325, 1344. So again, these are rated at 1470. I would say these are just as much below rated velocity as the Velocitors there. So both of these are kind of unimpressive in a way, but at least we got a little more power with our Interceptor. So let's hit our Ballistics gel blocks, see how these all compare. All right, we're going to do our real world simulation with all of these shots. We're going to go through 4 layers of denim, 3 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard, and 2 more clear ballistics. So we're going to run the handgun first here. So we're going to do our Velocitor and then our Interceptor. So here's our Velocitor, Interceptor. Go take a look. All right, so there's a little bit of a difference there. It does honestly look like from here, I mean, it looks like there could potentially be some expansion or mushrooming with the Velocitor, but I definitely do see it with our Interceptor. So we have pretty good damage going through here, but it looks like, you know, just looking at our MDF shot here, it does look like both of them did about the same going through the MDF. So then when we look here at our penetration with our Velocitor, it's less than the Interceptor. We're at about 13.5 inches of penetration. With our Interceptor, we actually have 16.5 inches, and it does, from this angle at least, look like more expansion. So it looks to me like through the handgun, our Interceptor did a little bit better. And you got to remember, these are completely different bullet designs, so that could also come into play. You know, when we look at the Velocitor, it almost looks like a pretty cool looking design. It looks very different than most ammunition like that. But our Interceptor looks like a very traditional style 22 bullet. So enough talk, let's hit this with our rifle, see how they compare that way. All right, 22 long rifle through the rifle. We'll do Velocitor and then Interceptor. Let's see how these compare. Velocitor, Interceptor. Let's take a look. All right, so there's a serious difference there going on. I wasn't expecting there to be really much difference at all, but there seems to be one. When we look through our MDF here, it does honestly look like the hole coming out the back of the Interceptor here is a little bit bigger than the Velocitor hole. They're both pretty big, which would indicate expansion of both of these. And when I tested this in the past, it looks like pretty similar performance. Actually a little bit different with the Velocitor than what we got last time, to be honest here. I was thinking, if I remember right, the Velocitor got under 12 inches of penetration through MDF and denim. This time it actually got more. So we got about 14 inches of penetration and expansion with the Velocitor. From this angle, it looks like the Interceptor, you know, expanded larger, but we only got a penetration of about 10 inches. And when we look at this first 3 inches here, up here on top is our Interceptor, here's our Velocitor. It does look like we were expanding much faster with that bullet design with the Interceptor versus the Velocitor. So even though it's a very ordinary looking bullet, it expanded bigger, and that might be why the Velocitor is designed a little bit different. It looks like it has a little more weight towards the nose, and that could be so that it doesn't under penetrate. So when we look at here, you know, in terms of self-defense, and that's really what all of my videos are around. They're not, you know, focusing on hunting or anything. What it looks like to me is, even though the Interceptor outperformed the Velocitor in terms of power, it looks like the Interceptor's a better choice for a handgun, but the Velocitor's a better choice for a rifle. And I think that's just the way the bullet designs are, and with the velocity we're working with. You know, with the Velocitor, we needed some more velocity out of that handgun. And with the Interceptor, we got that little extra velocity, and we got a bullet design that might be, you know, expand a little bit better at those type of velocities. It might be a little bit softer. When we look at it through our rifle, it looks like our Interceptor did worse through a rifle because maybe it's going too fast and it's just using that basic design, as where the Velocitor, you know, it's got more of that weight there in the front and maybe a harder alloy for all I know, or maybe a harder plating. So when we talk about what's better here, for the handgun, the Interceptor; for the rifle, the Velocitor. So let's take a close-up look at these, and I'm going to shoot up my steel, see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets. These two are from the pistol. So here's our CCI Velocitor, and here is our Aguila Interceptor. I would say the overall size of that expansion with both of those, or deformation, is pretty similar. It does look like the Interceptor. It's just a little bit more expanded on one side of that bullet versus the Velocitor, but overall pretty similar. Now when we go through our rifle, what we're looking at here is our Velocitor is here, and our Interceptor, which I marked, is here. So quite a bit more expansion with our Interceptor versus our Velocitor, but that's the very thing that caused it to not penetrate very much. It just mushroomed right out. So considering this, I don't think this is solely based on having a little more velocity that it did that. I think it's also in the bullet construction. Let me grab a couple of these unfired bullets to show. And we look at our Aguila one here. It's kind of hard to see close up, but there's a little bit more weight up here with our Velocitor, and our Aguila is more like a traditional old school style 22. So having that weight distributed like that, I think that's why we backed off that expansion just a little bit, which is kind of a good thing. So I think they designed it that way so that you would have good penetration through a rifle. So looking at these again, here's our Aguila pistol rifle, and here's our Velocitor pistol rifle. So yeah, I would say that our pistol is better off with that Aguila here because we got more penetration. But our rifle is better off here with our Velocitor because we didn't get over expansion, we got good penetration. So that's a close-up look at this. Alright, so I'm about 12 yards from the target. I'm going to do some practical distances with the handgun, and then we'll switch over to the rifle for a little bit longer distance and see how these shoot for me for just practical shootability. So first up we have our CCI Velocitor, 12 yards from the target. Let's see how this shoots for me. Alright, so I'm just popping them off kind of quick, just to kind of see how they feel for me, because that's kind of how I'd be shooting them in a self-defense scenario. Now let's try our Interceptors here. Alright, so I would say those shoot pretty good as well. I don't really see any difference in where they're hitting. So let me back it up to 25 yards and I'll do a little bit slower, see how they shoot for me. Alright, so I'm at my 25-yard marker here. I'm going to do the CCI Velocitors, kind of see how these fire for me, shooting a little bit slower. Alright, let me try for some headshots. Alright, so it looks like for me they consistently hit a little bit to the right, a little bit low. So let's do the same thing here with our Interceptors. Alright, those have a little bit more punch to them. Let me go for some headshots. Alright, failure to feed. Alright, so I had a little more issue with those hitting the target. Interesting thing about these is, you know, they just feel inconsistent from shot to shot. The Velocitors kind of feel the same. They just feel like a 22. These feel like, you get a few shots that feel like a normal 22, and then all of a sudden, pop, you get this really hard one that feels like you're shooting something significantly more powerful than a 22. So it's very interesting the way that shoots. So let me load up the rifle. We'll back it up and see how those two ammo shoot from, I'll do 75 yards. All right, so I'm back 75 yards. This is kind of just planking just for fun. I said in the past video that I would not be taking a shot with a rifle in self-defense. What I meant by that is from like a scoped rifle or something like that. But I still think it's important to, see what you can do from a distance like this with a rifle with iron sights. So these are actually fiber optic, but I like to kind of see what kind of practical shootability I can get. So here's our Velocitor from 75 yards. All right. I think I'm hitting kind of center high. It's really hard to tell from that distance where I'm hitting with these. They don't leave a very big of a mark on the target versus bigger calibers. So I got my Interceptors in here in my pocket. I only have one magazine for this rifle yet. Make it a lot easier if I got another one, but I'm only about 150 bucks into this rifle, so yeah. I'm already kind of going cheap here. So our Interceptors here, getting a little more velocity with them, not by a lot, but I would say 40-50 feet per second more maybe. But that doesn't necessarily mean everything. Sometimes bullet design and just the type of powders that are used can affect its accuracy. I've always noticed with Aguila ammo that it always has this really weird soapy smell that you don't get with CCI. So I don't know what kind of powder they're using, but it's definitely a different type of powder or a different brand or something. So here's our Interceptor here. Oh, seem to hit the target too. From what I can tell, they look like they're hitting in a similar spot here. So overall, interesting to see this ammunition tested against each other. Sometimes you hear a lot of stuff that people say, and maybe some of it's true. Maybe my rifle just doesn't shoot that fast. I tried to get a rifle that, I looked up a lot of the information on this. I looked at it compared to the Ruger 1022. And on average, this actually had just a tad more velocity than the 18-inch Ruger 1022. And a lot of people were telling me, well, a 16-inch barrel or an 18-inch barrel is optimal for velocity, because in the past I did a few tests with a bolt action 22-inch. So I was trying to get something that I think was pretty average. And based on what I know, the way that the powder burns, the type of powder is in a 22 and the way that it burns, 14, 16, 18 inches of barrel does sound about right for getting your maximum velocity. So back to my point here, it is kind of disappointing to see a velocity that's rated at a certain number and it doesn't quite get that. And a lot of people were telling me, oh, you got to use this ammo because this is how fast it goes, or this is how fast it was shooting for me. And I think what they're really doing is looking at the boxes and claiming that's the velocity that it is. And really a lot of times that is nowhere near the velocity that you're really going to get out of an ammunition. They're hopeful at best when they put those numbers on boxes usually. So what we're seeing here is both of these I would say are about 100 and let's see here, probably 140 feet per second below rated in both of these. Now, our Interceptor's rated at 35 feet per second faster, so we're getting that much faster than the Velocitor. But overall, both are kind of disappointing to see, we're not getting those rated velocities. But back around to the ballistic test here, it does look like if you're going to use a handgun, you're going to be a little bit better off with that with that Interceptor, because we had a little more velocity. You know, if I can think back, I think it was somewhere around 40 feet per second more, maybe on average. I didn't do the average numbers yet, but just kind of in my head here. That does seem to be just enough, in addition to having that, what I believe a softer lead bullet, to be a perfect combination for a handgun. You know, we're pushing it just fast enough, over 1,000 feet per second, and we have just the right, you know, bullet design that we're getting some expansion and mushrooming, getting good penetration. So what might be a negative thing for a rifle is actually a positive thing for a pistol, and we're seeing the opposite effect with you know, a rifle. You know, the extra forward bullet mass with the Velocitor seems to make it perform quite a bit better, and just that little backed off in velocity, in addition to that, seems to make it work a little bit better and a rifle to penetrate adequately. So that kind of sums up here, you know, Velocitor versus Interceptor. There is no, you know, just one answer. Velocitor and a rifle, yes. Interceptor, no. Velocitor and a pistol, no. Interceptor, yes. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.